You're watching BUTV, Bloomsburg University Television, the home of the Huskies. A long time ago, in another dimension...
Hello everyone, my name is Erik Sprowls, and I was the series creator and director and producer of the television series Frightening Fridays. And this is the first chapter in a series of ongoing commentaries between myself and cast and crew in how we brought this wonderful learning experience and television series to life. This was not my first time doing a show like this. I had done a show before called Fright Night Friday. It was similar in the horror hosting genre. Basically, it has a guy who wants to show monster movies, or somebody trying to take over the world with that concept. The scroll here is actually what I had written on the prior show. You know, it's a kind of generic kind of thing. Who really cares? You know, let's just get the show going. So, this was a concept that I had years before, and it was successful there, and I carried it over to Bloomsburg University and BUTV when I was hired by the university to teach television production. And again, everybody associated with this show was a student, with the exception of myself. So what amazed me the most about this show is the fact that we pulled it off, it looked good, and it was all done by amateurs, learning television, the craft, for the first time. So, as the curtain goes up, for the first time ever on our first episode, this is Ben Willis, who plays Cedric, which is one other carryover. I think there was a butler on my first show that I had done called Cedric. Was basically a butler in the castle that was hosted by, where he lived, where our host lives, in a castle. This is really him playing the piano, by the way. He wrote this piece. This is a piano that was in the studio that he put tacks into, so it would sound like a little bit of a tinty harpsichord. And that is not a wig. And that is him really playing. Surrounded by, you can see in the background, various frightening props. That the suit of armor, actually, in the background, if you take a look on the left side of the screen there, I had used on my first television series, Fright Night Friday, at another university, as they say, as well as some of the other props in the background that I collected over the years. And as you can see, this is our host about to make his grand entrance, known as the Creepy Reaper. And we didn't get a chance to get into the mythology as much as I wanted to before the series was canceled. It was canceled after, I think, 11 episodes. Mostly because I had to leave the university to pursue my doctoral degree. That's a pretty nice set when you look at it. If you look at the, one of the things I'm the most proud of is, if you look on the right side of the screen, well, when we go back to the watch it there, on the right side of the screen, the flame in the upper right corner, looks like a real gas fire, a real fire of some type, and it was basically a Kleenex that we had lit inside, hanging piece of sculpture there with a light inside and a fan blowing it, and it looks like it's really lit. I think I was the most proud of this episode more than any other in terms of lighting. I thought we nailed it with this lighting. We never really did get the same lighting effect throughout the rest of the series. As you can see, this is our pilot episode, so there's going to be some kinks we had to kick out of it. I think one of the things that Mike DeShane was, who played the Creepy Reaper, you can see his arm there where his glove is. We fixed that by the time the second episode got on the air as well. And also, can see his face. He's not really, he keeps feeling his face to make sure his mask is on. The mask lights up, and when he presses a button on his chest, and we kind of did away with that by the end of the series as well, because it got annoying. Mike couldn't see to begin with. And the hood that he had, he keeps pulling it back, especially in this episode. You see, it's so annoying looking at his arm, too. His hood keeps falling backwards every time he looks back, so he has to make sure it's on. You can just tell it's a dude in a costume. It's not even a... It's not even a Reaper or a skeleton. It's just some dude wearing gloves. It's so crap. But we wanted to get it on the air. Actually, we rushed it on the air is what happened. I had started teaching at Bloomsburg University where the series was produced, and originally I wasn't going to do this show in the beginning, and quite so soon. And three students, Joel Stevenson, who later goes on to play the character of Igor, Jody Reichert, and Kate McCarthy, one night we were all sitting at the studio talking about the plans I had at the university, and they said, "What's this Frightening Fridays thing you have planned?" And I said, "Well, it's a horror host show. I've done them before and was pretty successful, and I'd like to try one here." And they said, "Well, what are you waiting for?" So we ended up doing it ahead of schedule. I remember it was near Friday the 13th in 2004, and Halloween was just around the corner, and we did it. We got the set built, put together, the premise, the outline, the characters, the casting, and it all came together at last second, and we got it on the air. And some of the things we did in order to get it on, a premiere on Halloween, that just ironically happened to be on a Friday night, was some of the kinks we were still working out of the system when we got on the air. And you can see, that's why you see Mike's hand up his sleeve, or his cowl is falling off, or something like that. And this episode, like I said, I was probably the most happy with in terms of look. The lighting I thought was pretty good. It was supposed to be a dark castle, and the equipment we were working with at BUTV was not digital. They were chip cameras, and were not the highest quality. There, if you count Numbskull there on the left, the voice is done by a student by the name of Matt Colosimo, who later on in the series turns out to be Agent Mauler. We always had a play on words with everything on the show, because we like to parody once in a while some things, and we did a parody of the X-Files, calling it the Axe Files, and instead of Agent Mulder, it was Mauler, M-A-U-L-E-R, and instead of Agent Scully being S-C-U-L-L-Y, it's S-K-U-L-L-Y. We had done a similar parody on the first show I did, the Fright Night Friday, and it turned out to be pretty well, so we did a similar parody later in the series. I think it's episode 3 they come on board. I think you see, well, at the end of this episode you'll see what the surprise is. We actually have Matt Colosimo, but at that point in the series we weren't planning on him being any kind of parody of the X-Files, but I'll tell you more as we go on. This is Joel Stevenson, who played Igor, and he was one of the reasons the show came to light. I don't think even Joel realizes the credit that I give him for it, because he and my other two female students talked me into doing it. And otherwise, I probably wouldn't have started it until at least the spring, if at all. And fortunately, I listened to them, and we put it on the air. You can tell, too, that some of the dialogue was not the best. We're just starting to get a feel for ourselves here and what we were capable of doing. With those cheesy special effects. It really was a pilot, in the very sense of the word. It was, I think originally, if I remember correctly, we were only going to do one episode and put it on Friday the 13th, or maybe even Halloween, and see how it went from there. And the reaction went over so well that we decided to produce a series out of it. And more or less this episode is about introducing all of our characters to the show. Here's another one. This is Gigi, the maid, played by Leah Wagenblatt. Very talented, she is not shy to the camera. And I remember when we were starting the show, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted her to play or wanted her to do. And I remember in her audition, I said, I want you to give me 2 characters. Give me, for lack of a better word, I said, give me a slut and give me a dingy girl, And she was excellent at both of them. And she reprises the slutty role later on in the series. We do a parody of, another episode called Sexy Saturday Nights. We'll get to that when you see the episode, but she's kind of bubbly, and it just stuck, and I thought she did a very good job at it. And we kept her on, and I really liked what she did. She knocked me over, so I thought that was pretty good. I thought for the characters and for the people we had on hand at the time that the show was pretty nicely cast. Ben, of course, playing the pompous butler. Mike does a wonderful job as Creepy, as you can see up his shirt sleeve there and see his arm. Glad that went by the wayside. And Joel was Igor. Joel would do anything, too. He would run into walls. He would fall on his face. He would do anything. He was definitely a physical actor, a character actor. And he did a wonderful job at all this.
We tripped the breaker.
He's good at it, too. And I remember when we were first putting this show in the air, we went out to Spencer's department store and bought them out just prior to Halloween. And then after Halloween, we went out and bought a whole shitload of other stuff because then they had their 50 and 75% off sales, and we just bring it all and store it for use during the show. Some of the exteriors you're looking at the castles are different castles around the world, some from Ireland, England, Nottingham, all around. And as we're still trying to get a sense of what the show is about and what kind of feel we wanted, we did bend a little bit in the dark here. We used the excuse that it was a power outage, but we didn't know if we wanted it to be a comedy or a creepy kind of show. And I'd had so much success with camp on the last one. I said, in most of your horror films, horror host shows are camp. I said, let's keep it in that vein. So, but at the same time, we wanted to also give recognition to the movie we were hosting, some classic horror movie, because they are difficult to make back in the day with wires and smoke screens. And the first one appropriately was Night of the Living Dead, that was shot in Pittsburgh, PA. And ironically, later I had worked on the remake that came out in 1990. I played Zombie 49 in Night of the Living Dead. So it kind of stuck with me, and I never lost that appreciation for that movie I was in. Then I said, well, wow, it was really neat. I'd like to see the original. And then I saw the original, and then it kind of jazzed me on the whole idea of horror movies in general. And I'd met the little girl in Night of the Living Dead. We had her on the original Fright Night show I did. And so it kind of stuck. And that's the disappointing thing about this one. I wish we would have been able to stick around for a number of more years. We were just starting to get to the point in this show where people knew what we were doing. They started to feel comfortable with things, and all of a sudden I had to leave the college, which was sad but true. But I think for the time that we were there, we did a wonderful job with what we had, and the characters and what we learned. And the first episode is always difficult too, being the pilot. You don't know what you're doing, and we never really had scripts. We had treatments that we would sit around and come up with and say, okay, in this segment, Spooky's going to come out and welcome the show, or Creepy's going to come out and welcome the show. Old habits die hard. I called him Spooky. That was the host I had on my other show. Creepy would come out and say this, introduce the movie and, yuck it up. And we had a whole array of stuff we could do. And this is actually, to this day, after everything that happened on this series, one of my favorite scenes where we got to play with the special effects and the camera trickery. And, the best thing out of the show was that we were able to teach students that you don't always have to use a computer. In this day and age, people are always prone to plug into a computer to fix some kind of special effect. And all this is right here that you're looking at is camera trickery. There are no morphing. There's no special effects. It's just camera trickery. And I was especially proud whenever he turns the football plant, Gigi, whatever you want to call it, into Ben, and there are two Cedrics coming up here. So you can see Creepy's mask going off. He bumped it by accident. And oh, good Lord. He turns it into Joel or Igor. But it taught everybody. We were starting to get accustomed to special effects and camera trickery and how we could work different things, and we were all still getting used to each other. Remember, at this point right now, not only is everyone, with my exception, an amateur on this show, but no one knew each other. I didn't even know these people. I had known these people probably less than a month. Maybe less than 2 or 3 weeks when we were doing this particular episode. And so we didn't know what everybody was capable of doing. We didn't know what everybody... I didn't even know some of the names of the people. I remember I kept calling people by their wrong names. I kept calling Leah here Gigi for real. I remember I called her Jody once. I remember I called her Christina once. And there was just so many names and so many people to memorize in such a short time. And get a show on the air that we were kind of thrown together by fate. At this point, the show was brand new. We were still finishing the set as we shot on it because we had to launch the show on Halloween because it was just a perfect weekend to launch. And if you look on the floor, you'll see some gray carpeting that we were fortunate enough to... It's just great big giant outdoor gray shades of carpeting. We used black duct tape to put it down on the ground. And in the end, it looks as though it's great big giant stone slabs. Well, we ran out of carpeting. If you look on the left, it'd be Creepy's right, camera left. We ran out of it, and we needed really one more. And I think we got the one more around episode 6. But you see there on the floor there, it's white. And something we put the black over in the bottom right corner of your screen. That's just a black piece of cloth that we threw back on that white floor to cover up the fact that it was white in the first place. So we were still building the set as we were shooting. We were still getting used to everybody as we were shooting. We still didn't know each other's names. People were wanting cameos at the same time. This is John Whean and Tiffany, who were other students in the class, and they wanted cameo. Everybody wanted cameos on the show. They wanted to be on TV, and that's how you end up compensating groups of volunteers when you're doing something like this. Keep them happy, give them food, and these people were also getting grades for this, so that was a lot of fun. They knew that they had to turn out a quality product that they could be proud of, and it turned out to be pretty well. So I was always pretty happy with that. And Count Numbskull there, I always had an affection for him. I know Mike DeShane, who played the Creepy Reaper, as he adjusts his cowl there, didn't really care for Count Numbskull that much. I did. I just didn't like him as a regular all the time. Because he didn't do much. You could talk through him, or he could sing and play songs, and that was about it. So See how his skull lights up when he laughs? That disappeared around the 4th episode because there are wires inside there. It was tough enough for Mike to see. He couldn't see out his mask, you know. So we ended up ditching the wires soon thereafter.
I'm so scared of your show. But what are some things that you
I remember this. This was a young lady in my class. I don't remember which one it was.
Well, Miss Duff.
But she was doing a Hillary Duff impersonation there. And like I said, there wasn't a real plot. We didn't know how long we'd be around. We didn't know what we'd be doing just yet. And, you know, hell, most of the set was leftovers from the old show I did or something we would slap together. These are just... You can tell Ben feels as Cedric, he feels very uncomfortable, especially right here when Creepy says virgins.
You say so, sir. Flower.
Ben looked like he was going to laugh for a minute, like he was a little embarrassed. I kind of felt like he was, like all of a sudden he felt like he was 8 and he just found out what the word virgin meant. Ugh, it's funny I used the word virgin and there's Alice. So the jokes were crap. The writing was crap. But see, the thing is, and we learned this as we went, probably after the 2nd or 3rd episode, we learned that we wanted to have treatments ahead of time, scripts ahead of time. Down in the lower left corner, you can see how the floor is white, covered up by black little cloth. That's what I was talking about earlier. Anyway, we would have writing sessions that would generally take place on Monday nights at 9 o'clock, and we would hammer out the upcoming Sunday's episode from 9 to around 11 o'clock on Monday night. We would write it in a round table, myself and about a half dozen to a dozen students, where we would decide what's going to happen this week. And we wrote it on Monday nights, and during the week we would assemble everything we would need for that upcoming Sunday and then shoot on Sunday. And after we got done shooting on Sunday, we would meet and write as a team on Monday. So it became, after a while, after this first episode anyway, it turned into clockwork. And it was a lot of fun. We had a great time doing it. And, it's one of those, I don't remember any bad times. Now, I know I've worked on other projects before. And one of the keys to working on any production is you always seem to remember the good things and never the bad times. But I don't remember a lot of bad times with this Frightening Fridays show. Everybody seemed pretty hyped on it, pretty geared on it. And I think that's one of the things that we had so much fun doing, because there were so many roles that everybody could do a whole bunch of different things. And now, this is the character I was talking about earlier. This is Matt Colosimo, the voice of Numbskull. He goes on later to become Agent Mahler of the Axe Files. This particular scene was shot in my old apartment, by the way. And we weren't really sure what we were going to do with him. I know I wanted somebody that was going to be either like a ghost hunter or spirit chaser or something, some kind of cliffhanger that you're saying, well, who the hell is that guy, And especially for our first episode, we didn't even know if we'd be around for a second episode, but the show seemed to take off and people liked it. And we just kind of put him there because we wanted somebody to be watching that broadcast. And you kind of say to yourself, well, who is this guy? And eventually he went on to become, look at that huge, huge technical crew. He goes on to become Agent Mahler. Mahler, not Mulder, Mahler. And I got to give all the credit in the world to Gigi, or to Leah, for the creation of G.G. She wanted to be this stupid character that couldn't even spell her name. That number 389-4235 was the number of my old office where we would screen calls if people liked Fright Night or Frightening Fridays. And they did. So that'll take care of it for this particular commentary. I thank you for listening. My name is Erik Sprowls, and I will be back again on another disc for another segment. And I'll see you then. Bad luck and worst wishes.
Of the Huskies.